Previously on Ballz.
Gotcha, Mr. Campese, I gotcha. He knew exactly when that song was finishing, got his cap on, got himself ready. Another Sherbet fan.
Sherbet, oh my goodness. Oh dear, Darren, that's really getting bad, mate.
I'm getting in there. I'm finding those Aussie legendary Aussie songs. How's that from?
Just bring on AC/DC, something like that, you know.
All right, I'll bring some AC/DC in next week. We've got lots here. We'll fire some of that up. I'm just trying to think. That song also was featured in. You must have heard the 12th Man, right? You know the 12th. Billy Birmingham is his name, right?
Yeah. Why don't you get some of his little clips and put them on? It's fantastic.
Oh, we should actually. Have you ever heard the 12th Man?
Yeah, they're great.
Because we have Simon Hill here who does.
It's a distant second.
No, it's not. I think you do our commentators and people very well. Have you ever heard Simon do the commentary voice?
Yeah, he has.
You did the one with didn't he do the launch of the radio show?
That's I was chatting to Ballz.
Of course, Campo was there.
Yeah.
Do a little bit of plum for Campo.
Oh, but Campo knows.
He hates it when I put him on this.
I hate it.
All right, Campo, welcome. I was just trying to think. Let's try and get some of that 12th Man. Very, 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 very funny.
I've got all of them.
All the cricket commentators. Billy Birmingham. Did you ever meet him?
Yeah, he's actually funny. One guy does every voice, eh?
He does every single one of those.
Yeah.
The whole lot. That CDs he did the whole thing himself.
Is it true that the Channel 9 commentators can't stand him?
Oh, I don't really know. I mean, I suppose the only reason is because if they do, is it because he gets a lot of publicity. But if you listen to Ian Chappell and Greg Chappell and Maxie Walker and all that, and Billy Berman does them spot on. So
yeah. Max Walker.
Don't get him going now. All right, just another thing. Just got to clear up there. How do you pronounce your surname?
Well, it depends on what country you come from. Because really, it should be Campese.
Campese, the Italian pronunciation.
Exactly, that's how you should say it, but Campese is what most people say. Well, Campese is probably the closest.
All right, no, I heard Cappy saying Campese this weekend, so I thought maybe we've been getting it wrong all the time.
No, it's not too bad. You've got not a bad accent, Darren.
Cool. So, no one got it right. Everyone was completely wrong.
Last week was a disaster, wasn't it?
Jeez, no one thought the Brumbies weren't going to get that point they needed.
But it was quite interesting watching, Darren, because even, I did the Sharks game with Supersport, and the first half, it was just like watching the teams. I watched the Stormers, I watched the Brumbies. All the teams that had to win really played defensive rugby. They thought, we'll just go out there and play the game and win. But as I said, the Reds are probably the only one where they belted the New South Wales side. New South Wales were useless. I don't understand why they're so bad. But the other teams, the Stormers, look the same. They try to play running rugby, but they can't do it. And that's the only concern I have if they obviously go in this competition. If they've got to face the Crusaders at home, so they beat the Bulls, the Crusaders they're going to get more supporters for the Crusaders than the Stormers at home. And that's going to be the scariest home game for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's in another week's time. There's a few issues to get sorted out this coming weekend. But let's just have a look at what you say about the sides being so defensive. Let's start first of all with the Brumbies. I mean, they literally. Do you think they went out there? Jake went out there saying, "Let's just get that point and just defend."
Yeah, Darren, it's interesting. I read the Australian papers, and one of the journalists, a mate of mine, Greg Rowden, said, finally the Brumbies have become undone with no name players, no experience. So I think they were waiting for them to fall. Typical journalist. But and if you have a look at the way they played, the Blues are the sort of side that can create anything. And to win, you've got to win every game. And I think it could have been down to this Test series cup about a month ago, where teams had a rest. You've got to keep on continuity. If you look at the Brumbies during the season, I think they won 4 or 5 games by 1 point or 2 points. So, they scraped home, and unfortunately, they just didn't have that firepower. And the Blues played really well, and the Blues actually took the game to them. They didn't allow the Brumbies to get in any sort of structure, any sort of continuity, and that was the game, and that's simple. When the captain after the game said, "Oh, you know, we didn't really turn up tonight," I said, "How can you not turn up in a competition like this?"
I don't understand
that's the greatest
yeah.
excuse. And then all the players after the game are looking, "Oh, we just lost." It was in their hands, you know, and the coaches' structures. I mean, you've got to go out there and win a game. You can't go out there, protect the lead, and expect to win.
Yeah. I mean, look, they still had a chance, but there was, you know, highly unlikely that those other results weren't going to go, or were going to go the way in favour of the Brumbies. So it's taking a hell of a chance to think, "Oh, we're in anyway." As you say, I mean, how does I still go into a game when you haven't done the job yet and say, you know, we didn't turn up? That's we've heard that said before, and it's bizarre to think about, first of all, but second of all, you know, I tweeted that I feel for Jake because, as you say, he's taken a team of basically no-name brand players, done bloody well with them in the context of the Australian conference. Yes, everyone says they are the weakest conference in the whole competition, but they're going to remember him for and remember what happened for the last game where they basically fell out and they're out of the competition. So as the season goes, probably a failure.
Yeah, well, I think that's how people look at it as well. I mean, you're a coach, you've got to perform. It's simple. And Jake, you know, a lot of, as I said, you know, on radio, I got it wrong. I thought he would have failed, but, you know, congratulations to him. But again, now you look back and say, mate, well, hold it, you've got to tell the team, you've won a World Cup, guys, go out there and just take it to them. You know, and do you think it had a lot to do with, like the Chiefs lost in the 84th minute? That was the season between coming first or second as well. So the week before, the team's not taking the 5 points, like the Reds would have made it a lot easier for themselves. Things like that, you know. And the Stormers last week as well, and the Stormers on Saturday. You've got to win every game. This is the most. This is the part of the season everybody is looking forward to. It doesn't matter how many games you won. It all depends now on what happens from now into the final. And the thing is, you've got to play your best rugby. You can't rely on, "Oh, guys, we're number one. We've done pretty well." It doesn't work like that in competitions like this. You've got to play your best rugby now, because from now on, every game is a final. If you lose, you're finished.
Yeah.
And the Brumbies didn't even make it that far. So it is very disappointing. But again, that's what rugby's about. The Hurricanes beat the Chiefs. You know, 4 minutes of rugby over full time, and they won the game. So it just shows you anyone's capable of winning. That's how close this competition is.
Yeah. One of the areas of concern from a South African side's point of view, and maybe it's a fault of all three of our sides that have gone through, is this tendency to play only one half of rugby in a game. We saw the Sharks after their performance the week before. I was seriously worried, and I mean, thank goodness Heinrich Brousseau for them went off at half time, because I think I actually said at half time, I tweeted somebody going that if they don't muzzle Heinrich Brousseau, they might be watching the playoffs on TV next week. He went off, and it was a different game. The Stormers have had this tendency to either have a bad first half or bad second half, and even the Bulls, you know, didn't look. I mean, they didn't look like a side that's going to give the Crusaders too many sleepless nights next week.
No, well, you're right. I think, you know, the biggest concern now is that, you know, when the Sharks played the Bulls, it's like, you know, they basically hate each other. You know what I mean? Like, there's that respect and that competition there. And the Sharks knew how to do it, but they've gone such a high. And this week, as you were saying, I actually said on TV, I said, Brousseau's off. I said, you know, the Cheetahs are gone. They're going to lose by a lot more points now, because he was the player that was always there, slowing the ball down and stealing the ball. And when you lose a player like that, that's why I don't understand why he's not on the Springbok side, but that's another story. And, you know, that's why you look at the Crusaders. The Crusaders, to me, the only team really that turn up and play the style of rugby you want to play and you want to win. They all back themselves. They're all players one team. Now, if Morné Steyn plays bad, who else is going to play well for the Bulls? Hogarth's a great player at 7, but Spieth hasn't been seen all year. Their back row is dysfunctional. So, you know what I mean? This is the time now you need the team to play as a team.
Yeah. And
I think the Sharks, you know, wanted to beat the Bulls, which they did, but then they sort of said, "Oh, the Cheetahs, you know." What would have been interesting if it was a dry paddock, because the Cheetahs played really, really good rugby, but they just can't finish. Where the Sharks, you know, they sort of brought Bismarck Duplessis on. The one thing that I do like about overall and the Crusaders, they don't change their team around. They keep the same combinations. We said this last week as well. Yeah, the Sharks had Craig Burton on, It didn't really work. Craig's a very good player, but Bismarck's just being there, presence makes a big difference for the opposition.
What was, I mean, I don't know if you had a chance to chat to anyone there, but the only way I could see it was Plum was thinking, okay, look, we play normally, we bring a couple of guys off to bring fresh legs on at the end. We'd rather have our experienced players on at the end. Is that the reason why he started with those guys and then made those changes quite early, because he wanted those experienced players to be there at the end, and they didn't have 80 minutes in them because of all the rugby they've been playing?
Well, I think if you look at the Rugby World Cup last year, they brought Bismarck on for the last 20 and destroyed everybody. Yeah. So it should have been around the other way around.
Yeah.
But I believe, I heard that Busy was injured, so that's why they left him on the bench. Pat Lambie shouldn't have played at all. You can see that he was not 100% fit, and now he's lost. Staines lost. So you're going to the Reds with two key players not there. So, again, now you've got to shuffle the team around again. Why didn't you, continue to say, this is the side, we're going to stick with it and play the whole team, combination-wise, confidence-wise, continuity-wise? It makes sense. As soon as you swap and change players around, it just adds a bit more pressure on the players.
Dave, you mentioned it in the past, the role of referees and their influence on a game. This past weekend saw a couple of dubious calls by the TMO. I see Crusaders coach Todd Blackadder saying that it could end up that a questionable TMO decision could decide the Super Rugby title. What is your take on the calls this weekend?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be like that. Just I do a bit of twittering as well, and there's a guy in Australia who's a journalist sort of complained about the rugby league referees, and I just wrote back and said, you've got to be kidding. I said, the referees in rugby league, they've got two referees, they've got about half a dozen rules, and now he's complaining about them. I said, come to rugby where the laws are so much, we've got one referee that misses a lot, two linesmen that see nothing, and we've got a TMO that sometimes has a guess. So I said, stop whinging, and he came back and said, yeah, true. Unfortunately, the rugby referees have got too much control of a game, and the thing is, I spoke to a referee, I won't mention names, and he was saying they can basically penalise you at a ruck for 10 different things if they want to. And that is the scary thing about the game. They've got to clean up the laws, and the laws, unfortunately, are made by the hierarchy of the IRB who don't play the game. Now, as you said, I feel sorry for the spectators because their team's going to lose because of a TMO decision, and there's some shocking decisions, and we saw that last week in the Rebels game against the Lions. No way did the number 10 for the Rebels have control of the ball to score the try. And you can see in his face, but the referee gave it to him, a try. It was not a try. So you've just got to make sure, unfortunately, you've got to be in the right part of the field towards the end of the game where you're not going to give a silly penalty away, or a referee's going to make a decision where, most referees look at these days, they seem to do one side one half and then change around for the second half. Yeah. So you just got to be very, very careful.
But you look at Israel Dag's try against the Force. I mean, even on the replay, how do you get that wrong?
Well, if you look at the game before that, the week before when they played, 2 weeks ago when they played the Hurricanes, the referee had a big decision in that about the Crusaders losing because Smith scored 2 tries. One where he had a player in front of him who obstructed 2 referees, that's Bryce Lawrence, of course, and it was fine. They're on a law on their own, and unfortunately, and that's why I think that it's a bit like tennis now. I think that if there's a decision, I reckon the captain should say, excuse me, I'd like to question you on the decision. Can you please have a check? Because I think it's too vital now that these games in the situations where the top teams are going to lose because of a bad decision by a referee, and the thing is, the referee says after the game, oh, I made a mistake. I said, well, it's a bit late. You just lost the game for somebody. Yeah. And all the supporters can see that. So, look, unfortunately, that's one thing they're trying to do with this new TMO. But again, I don't think it's enough. I think we've gone professional, but we still got a lot of amateurs involved in the game, which is not right.
No, but it's worrying when they're bringing in something like technology, and you don't want other sports to start pointing fingers saying, look, even rugby can't get it right. If you've got the TMO and you've got the ability and the facility and the luxury of being able to sit and have a look at a replay on TV And so many people can look at it going, well, look, okay, the McLeod one, from different angles, it looked different. And I still don't know if he touched the ball or not, if there was a knock-on or not.
Yeah. It looked like, for me, it was a knock-on. The close-up one, his hand was near his knee as well. So you've got to say, 95% chance his hand did touch the ball.
Because he was going for the ball with his hand. He
but
wasn't
the
trying to
referee, the linesman said no, it was a try, and the referee said try. So he didn't say, let's just go and have a look. He'd already decided it was a try.
Yeah. No,
So
is he allowed to, that's the other thing, is the TMO allowed to have any jurisdiction on what happens in the field of play? He can't call on that anyway. So it was the referee or the linesman to say it was a knock-on.
What rugby league do, which is pretty smart, is if they score a try, the referee can say, look, 3 tackles back, I think there was a forward pass. Can you please check? And they'll quickly go back and say, yeah, forward pass, no try.
Yeah.
So they'll do that. But in rugby, you can see it. The TMO will have a look about 25 times to have a look, and everyone in the crowd will say, it's a try, no try, and he still has another look, and another look, and another look. You know, I go back to the World Cup 2007 when England scored in the corner. And I saw it was no try, but then they had another look and a look. And I said, mate, it was a no try. His foot was out. Simple. Yeah. But some of these referees,
they look for something else.
They look for something else, and that's not right, you know.
Yeah, sorry, Simon. Before you come there are enough lines, particularly with forward passes. I mean, there were a couple of blatant ones that were let go again on the weekend. There are enough lines on the field for you to give you some kind of perspective of whether the ball's going forward or not. You know, especially if you're a touch judge. If you're standing at that angle, I can understand a referee who might be standing behind, you can't really see the angle, but what are the touch judges doing, or the assistant referees as they call them now? What are they watching if they're not seeing that type of thing? Well,
they don't really see much at all. And I mean, you know, we all saw the Sharks game when there was a head-eye tackle on the Sharks play, and the play went on about 25 metres.
Yeah.
And the linesman came in and said, head-eye tackle. And I just gone, mate, that was on the halfway line, and the Sharks were in the 22.
Yeah.
And that's when he said, I'm just warning the guy. Fantastic. But they don't have to go all the way. You know, it's just sometimes they've got to have common sense. And I think sometimes it slows the game down and it's unnecessary. But again, you know, sometimes the linesmen see things that you don't want them to come in with. And sometimes they come in and they miss half the stuff. So it's a lottery.
David, the Stormers, they have a week's break now. They were 13-0 up with 35 minutes to play. They ended up beating them 26-21. If you are Jean de Villiers and Alistair Coetzee, would you be concerned heading into the semis?
I would be concerned. Depends who they're playing.
Yeah.
I think if they do play the Crusaders, I think they're in a bit of trouble, because the Crusaders are the team that can create opportunities out of nothing. So far, the teams that they've played against really the last couple of weeks aren't teams that have got Dan Carter, Richie McCall, you know, Dags. They've got players who can step, who can swerve, who can kick. They're a team you've really got to watch. You know, they'll score a try from their own half. It's great to defend, and we did see on the weekend, you know, you mentioned that game, I was watching it, and I think it got to 13-0. Then all of a sudden, for the next 15-20 minutes, the Rebels didn't leave the Stormers didn't even get in the Rebels' half. They just seemed to went to sleep. Okay, that's it, shop up, we'll defend now. You know, and I think it's great to kick the ball away, but you kick the ball away, you're going to give the opportunity to the teams who can create things. So, you know, as I said, I spoke to one of their coaches 2 weeks ago, and they all decided, we're not going to run the ball, we're going to defend. Sometimes defence wins, sometimes defence loses. Depends who you play.
All right, last one, Johnny.
And David, obviously a big boost for the Stormers ahead of that semi, having Eben Etzebeth, Gio Aplon and Sia Kolisi in the mix.
Yeah, look, I think that they're fortunate that you know, they've got some really good players. But again, the Stormers, you know, they're number 8. The Canadian can't play because he hasn't been here long enough. And I saw on the weekend they put a hooker at number 2, at number 8. I mean, do you think when you're going to play a New Zealand side that's going to put a hooker at number 8? Fair income. It might work against the Rebels who come last. You're playing a top quality side who've got probably about 8 or 9 All Blacks. I mean, these guys, and as I said, they're going to play it in Cape Town, and it's going to be like a home ground advantage to the Crusaders because of the amount of supporters they get. And that's not going to be good for, obviously they've got to win this week, beat the Bulls, but again, it's going to be very, very interesting. The Bulls unfortunately didn't look at all confident going in over to New Zealand, playing in their conditions. It's going to be cold. Mornay Stay's been missing a few shit shots at goal, which is very unusual for him. So, and I don't think their back road's very functional at the moment. Speed still is a good he's not a good captain, and he's actually more worried about captain than playing the game.
Just a scenario for you, captain of the Bulls. You're playing against the Lions. You win by just enough so that you go to Brisbane and play the Reds. You know you the last game, so you know what you need to do to work out who you're going to play. People are saying our rugby teams don't do that, but I mean, do you think the Bulls are a bit doff by actually putting themselves in a position to go to a much tougher venue, the Crusaders, than play against a Red side who, in all likelihood, they knew that Quade Cooper was probably going to miss a week anyway?
I would have kicked that ball straight out.
I think the Bulls are sucker for punishment. I think they they want to win, and they just want to win, and they care. And the thing is, they don't actually think about the scenarios, and they're a team that realistically doesn't really matter in this competition. You've got to beat everybody. It doesn't matter who you play. It's like a World Cup. It doesn't matter. You can't take an easy. There's no such thing as an easy route. If you want to win, you've got to beat the best. So that's just the way they are. But the scary thing is, this weekend you've got the two finals from last year playing.
Yeah.
So they've got to the finals because they're good sides. So you've got to go over there. You've got to play some really good rugby, or hope the referee's going to help, because it's going to be very, very difficult. As everyone says, home ground advantage does make a big difference these days. And the Reds in Suncorp, without Cooper, might be not as easy, as hard as it was. But the Sharks have got to turn up. No Lambie, no Stain.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult.
Yeah. So they lose two in two quality, and the Reds only lose one, which is right. It's going to be interesting. So your predictions then: 2 home wins for these what turn out what basically are quarterfinals. Yeah,
look, I just think it's going. I have to go for the Crusaders, because I actually tipped them. I did tweet on Saturday after game. I think the final's going to be between the Reds and the Crusaders
again.
So you can just imagine I copped a lot of abuse from the Stormers supporters, but it's great to just stir it up a bit, Darren.
There we go.
I think those teams too will win. I think the Chiefs, they've lost 2 games on the trot. They're going to have a week's break. Continuity is going to be struggling for them, and the Stormers as well. You cannot defend for the rest of your life.
Yeah. All right,
just
David.
Quickly, Darren, there's my bottle of red tonight.
Yeah, what do you got there?
That's a Penfolds. That's a Penfolds.
Penfolds? Is that a KZN wine or what?
No, this is Australian Penfolds. This is 1981 vintage.
That must be worth a bit.
Oh, it's
one of those prestige wines that if you go and have a look at Grange, Penfolds Grange, costs an absolute fortune.
Absolutely. There we go.
Is that from the Coonawarra? No.
Yes, it is. It's the Penfolds. It's been around for many, many years, and it's just one of those wines that people collect. It's great. It's called Grange Hermitage.
Looks very nice. 1981. Wow.
1981.
How do you know that's not vinegar right now?
You don't open it, do you? That's why it's called vintage Grange.
You'll find out when you do. David, nice long session, but it's great. It's getting down to the final phases of Super Rugby. Look forward to catching you next week here on Ballz.
Well, hopefully our predictions are a bit better than last week, Darren.
Yeah, well, now it is 2 home wins. That's what David says. And remember, next week we will also be on 91.3 in the Western Cape on Alternative FM.
You're getting some national exposure, David,
there
on
we
radio.
Go. So
on the wireless.
As long as I don't go to the Cape, where obviously I'll get abused for...
Yeah.
No, well, we are, unfortunately.
There we go. It's going to be in the Western Cape, so you can talk to some of those guys that were tweeting you. Thanks, David. Enjoy. Love to the family.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, man.
Bye.
Cheers, Dave.
Nice session there with David Campese.
We the best on 3. 1, 2, 3. We the best.
2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mondays to Fridays live on balls.co.za. Balls.co.za.